particular about ensuring that the banking system is kept vibrant and it's very kept relevant to support the entire industry, the entire economy as such. So therefore, the banking system, which is very strong, is an advantage for us. And then we also have the advantage of some of the finest, the industrial sectors, industrial empires, which are dominating the Indian economy. For example, some of the industries, for example, the Reliance industries, the Tatas, for example, Tata Steel, Tata Motors, for example. And we do also have the advantage of the pharmaceutical companies which are very, very dominant when it comes to the making of pharmaceuticals, which are also export oriented in nature. So that advantage we have. And then people have started talking about the possible shift in the global trade. In fact, as I said in my initial remarks as to how the countries of the world started suffering because of the disruption caused to the supply chain and therefore the value chain because of their war dependence on China. And because of the fact that everybody is unhappy with China and everybody strongly believes that China is responsible for letting the virus into the rest of the world, and every other country is made to bear the brunt of the pandemic because of the fact that it was China was responsible for it, and everybody started hating China. And therefore, most of the countries who are having their factories located in China, possibly not necessarily on trade terms or not necessarily on monetary terms or financial terms, they might shift to their place of operation or place of business. But going by the nativity argument or going by the, for example, the Sudesi argument, they might, even for example, countries like the US, the companies which belong to US, companies which belong to the Western countries, for example, they might have taken a decision, or they might relocate themselves. They might come to India. Perhaps that is what the expectation is. And of course, you have to see here the financial considerations or the business considerations are very important. Business is a business always. So they may not really go by the the consideration of nationalism. Since I belong to US, and since I'm impacted most by the China, and therefore I would like to shift from China. Since I'm an Indian, and therefore I'm an Indian company, I'm impacted most by the Chinese virus, and therefore I'm shifting from China. So that might not really happen. Companies always base their decisions on the economic considerations or the business commercial considerations. So that might not happen, but there is an increasingly higher belief on the part of the people who are at the helm of affairs in India. The government people have started thinking, politicians have started thinking on the lines of the fact that India, being a country with a lot of facilities, we would like to have the relocation happening. And in fact, that is true. In fact, immediately after about a month's time, when everybody started accusing China, criticizing China for the irresponsible way of behavior, letting the virus out and so on. So our own people, for example, UP's chief minister was inviting people from across China to have Uttar Pradesh. And therefore, so that is the trend which is catching up, and many more such things could happen. And this will definitely go for countries to think on the lines of new global cooperation. And as I said, we have our own ways of talking out, devising ways and means by which we can have some trade agreements with our neighboring countries. In fact, we do have SAARC is always there, and we also have the BRICS. And of course, the post-pandemic, we might come up in some president was making a mention to how India is a special country, is a friend of America, he was telling, and he said he will invite India to be part of the G7 group. And although India is not part of the G7 group traditionally, so therefore it will open up new vistas of opportunities for India to be an important partner of global trade, to be an important country when it comes to trading with other countries. So that is definitely is there for us. And then, so after discussing as to what are the challenges and what are the opportunities available for India, now let me turn on to what are the strategies. So India as a country affected like any other country in the world by the pandemic So what are the strategies that India as a country can adopt in order to cope with the pandemic, and how are we to place ourselves as a country to be able to expand our industrial base, to be able to expand our export base, to be able to be competitive enough to be able to be attractive for the rest of the world, so that our products are respected and our products are attractive for the foreigners, and therefore we are considered to be an important exporter or importer for those countries. And what are the ways out? Definitely. So it is very important that we have to consider, we'll have to have a look at what kind of strategies the country as India can always do that. So first and the foremost, we always believe in reforms. So India is a country of reforms. So ever since, of course, right from 1947, 1950, in fact, in 1950, we had the industrial policy statement, and those policy statements were very particular about as to making mention as to what kind of industry should be started by the government, what kind of industry should be in the private sector, what kind of industries must be in the joint sector, because those days Indian economy was considered to be a mixed economy, which is something which sounds something strange. And of course, though we do not any longer use the term mixed economy, because we have come a long way. There has been a total change in the philosophy of looking at the management of the economy. So therefore, the reforms. In fact, no one can forget the very popular banking sector reforms unleashed by the Narasimham Committee. Narasimham Committee, we had two types of committees, one and two. So those the Narasimham Committee came out with a lot of recommendations, and in fact, we have started reaping the fruits of those recommendations. And in fact, successive governments, successive finance ministers in India, they started implementing, of course, in part and parcel, not in total, not in wholesome, some of the major recommendations with regard to more particularly applicable to the public sector banks. And therefore, you have seen as to how the 28 public sector banks have now gone to become 12 public sector banks, and the government has gone about the major consolidation exercise. And of course, the whole idea is to make the Indian banking system so sound and strong. Instead of having too many and too fragile, too weak kind of banks, the belief is too many. Too little banks and have too strong banks. So two strong banks, if there are few in number, also doesn't matter. And therefore, the banking system, that's all about the reforms. And very recently, you might have seen as to how many number of times the government of India, the finance minister has come out with a lot of measures of reforms. And very recently, we can always take pride in saying that the government has come out with a package of relief measures, call them as stimulus package, like any other country in the world, because this is an unprecedented event which is bringing the entire world to a standstill. And this unprecedented time requires unprecedented action, and therefore US brought out a huge trillions of dollars worth of stimulus package. Similarly, Germany, Japan, so many countries, UK also. Similarly, India also brought out a stimulus package costing 20 lakh crores. So 20 lakh crore to stimulus package was unleashed by the finance minister, with more focus on paying attention to the landless labor, migrant labor, and the poor people, and then the agriculture farmers, small traders, small firms, medium firms, and so on and so forth. So giving right from the cash handouts to giving more other benefits. And very recently, finance minister was on air, and madam was talking about as to how it is important for India to let loose the ownership also. And she's talking about, as we are even prepared to pare our ownership. That means we would like to, if at all necessary, we will reduce our ownership rights in the public sector banks, in the centrally owned public sector undertakings. And therefore, the government is bent upon, and it's not totally privatization. It is not to be taken as though the government is bent upon privatizing everything, but only what the government is trying to send a signal. The government is sending very clear message and signal across the country and across the globe that here is a country with a lot of opportunities. Please come to invest in India. So that is what the message we should take. And very recently, you also say, a country is judged. So how do you assess a country as a country which can be considered as an attractive destination, especially for a foreign company or a multinational company? And as students of commerce, as teachers of commerce, we know pretty well it is the investor-friendly attitude of the government at the helm that matters a lot for the people who are from outside the country. And they are always looking at the various points of view, the various statements, various policies which are enunciated by the government. They keep listening to it. And if they find to be anything advantageous to them in terms of what is spelt out by them, for example, as I said, I think last month the UP chief minister was making a mention as to how they will repeal many of the age-old labor laws. And he says those labor laws will be suspended for a certain number of years. He said for 2 years or 3 years, the operation of the labor laws will be suspended, sending out a clear signal to the world across, to the entrepreneurs across the world, that we are not anything inferior when it comes to attracting investments, when it comes to making India as an attractive destination, when it comes to, if you find and if you think labor is big trouble. No, I won't say that labor is a big trouble. It's because when it comes to the four factors of production, land, labor, capital, organization, it is the labor which is more important. I'm not here to say that labor is subordinate. Labor is predominant. Without labor, of course, the land is of no use, capital is of no use. Nobody is required to do anything by way of organization. But the fact remains, these are extraordinary times, and therefore there is nothing wrong in taking some extraordinary steps. And of course, by duly protecting the interests of labor. And therefore, these kinds of steps, like for example, the statement from the finance minister, the statement from across the globe, even from across the country, making it clear that we are not an archaic country, for example, depending on the age-old, outmoded or outdated labor laws. So we are friendly to you, the investor. Please do come with your capital, with your technology, set up your factory. We will provide you everything that you need. That's what the message is. Again, I tell you, there is a strategy which is already being followed by most of us, most of the states, I mean. No, we talk about what is called the competition. See, competition is the fulcrum of a business. For a business to be successful for a long period of time, what is important is the business has to improve its competitive capabilities. So how to improve the competitive capabilities? Obviously, everybody knows through quality and innovation. So why are we so dependent on the US made products? And we are, for example, consciously and unconsciously making use of the US services, US products. For example, the Facebook, the Amazon, the Google, for example. All of us, if not most of us, are using the Apple products. So therefore, we are dependent on the quality products, and we have become subservient to, I would say, we have become slaves to the innovation. I'm not saying that we have become slaves to the America. We have become slaves, even without our conscience. We have become slaves to the countries like the US because we love quality, we love innovation. Wherever it happens, we take it. And therefore, for India to be preeminent in the world, and to be liked by the people, to be loved by people, we have to enhance the competitive strength by way of constant innovation, and then to be very, very quality conscious. Unfortunately, you will see many of our products, and of course, as I said, we are in the forefront when it comes to manufacturing, for example, pharmaceutical industry, then maybe the automobile industry, steel making, and so on. Many of the products which are made in India are not liked by people outside India. Even our own people are not liking it. I'm sorry to share this. In fact, I'm not in a position to accept my own the product which is made in India. I just make it a point to see that, to find out as to which country this particular product is made, whether it is made in Germany, whether it is made in US. I always ensure that I always go for a product made in Germany, because Germany is to be a place of, it's a place of nation where you have the better producer, best to produce products available. You have the industries, for example, the car making industries and so on. So very good when it comes to the product being manufactured in Germany. The German products are far superior than in any part of the globe. Therefore, the watchword is very be competitive to be competitive. Now to have quality conscious embedded or imbibed in everybody's mind. So that only will make India a great country. And then I was just making a mention about as to how the states. See, very recently, even in fact, yesterday, if you happen to read the newspaper, our own Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu has come with a statement. And in fact, he has been making statements and he has been calling upon the entrepreneurs from across the globe. I think last 2 months ago, there was an invitation from the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, Honorable Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, to companies in US or companies which have the location in China. For example, the Apple and so many other countries, I mean other companies. He has given the invitation. He has requested them to relocate themselves to set up their factories in Tamil Nadu. So that is what is happening. So there is a healthy competition even among the states. The states are organizing what is called the investor meet, the global investor meet. Every state is organizing. So therefore, it is very happy. It is very interesting to see as to how the states have become competitive. Every state is encouraging or every state is giving some sort of an inducement for a company outside India to come and set up the factory in India. For example, when Tamil Nadu is spelling out some measures of incentive, Telangana is coming out with another set of incentives. Andhra Pradesh is coming out with another set of incentives. Kerala is coming with another set of incentives. Karnataka. Therefore, every other state is competitive and then is trying to attract the companies from across the globe. And I would see this trend to continue for when post-COVID, to be able to continue to. I will just finish off another 5 minutes time, and then and therefore post-COVID-19. So you will see a new world, a new alignment, a new world order, definitely. So world is not going to be end. I mean, world is not going to end. As I said in my initial remark, it is only the beginning of a new world. It's a beginning of a new world. A new world is born with a new technology, and therefore, as Professor Ramakrishnan said, you will have new people, you will have new technology, new skills, which will enable us to take up the challenges in the new global arena. And you will have better trade negotiations with the countries of the world. Maybe we'll have to rework ourselves with the neighboring countries or maybe with other countries so that we can rebuild our economy. And definitely, definitely, I'm very confident that you will have a new India, you will have a new world, and you will have a new world order. You will have a new global trade order. You will have definitely the entire globalization is revisited, and you will see countries flocking together, trying to make attempts to energize themselves and then to re-globalize. You will have a re-globalized world, a new world, a better world to live, and definitely the paradigm shift will be of benefit to India particularly and to the entire world. So with these words, I would like to end my presentation, and I would like to take this opportunity to compliment the faculties of the Department of Commerce of the very great famous university, the Wales University in Chennai, and would like to thank my own co-presenter, very popular Professor Natarajan, for co-presenting with me. And I would like to also thank my good friend, Professor Ramakrishnan, who is the Dean of Commerce and Management. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day, and you will have a very, very great future. Thanks a lot. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Now we'll just have a very small Q&A session, sir, for hardly we'll take only 2 questions.
Shall we have it after the completion of? Would that be fine?
Yes, sir.
No, I don't mind. I'm ready.
Okay, if you are ready, I think the questions are ready, sir. Just 2 questions, sir.
Go ahead.
Right, sir. Now I call upon Mrs. Aparna.
Sir,
you can proceed further.
can you audible?
Aparna.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, audible.
Good morning, sir. A very nice section. This is question from Ilavarasan Ramamurthy. Which sector may affect more and more after COVID-19?
Which sector you mean?
Yes.
Of course, the kind of sector which is more and more will get affected is the sector which is dependent on, for example, China, and which will see the disruptions because of the supply chain. And obviously, the automobile sector is considered to be, because for all our intermediate goods requirements, raw material requirements, we depend on China. And for that matter, even pharmaceutical companies also, who are considered to be very dominantly present in India, they also source their basic requirements, from China. So therefore, barring probably the IT companies, maybe the banking companies which are not that much affected, every other sector is likely to be affected because of, but this is only a temporary, phenomenon. This is not going to be lasting forever. So for every, threat, for every risk, there is always an opportunity available. We'll come out, we'll emerge out of it very successfully. So temporarily, probably certain sectors like the automobile sectors might be affected, which are dependent more on the Chinese companies, the requirement for the raw materials, and also probably because some of the companies are dependent on the global, for example, the exportation, especially for example our own the apparels, for example. So some of our, the industries like the apparel making is considered very popular in this part of the country, and since there is a possibility that there might be a temporary dip in demand globally, and since there is a huge competition from neighbors like Bangladesh, even for example Indonesia, and even Sri Lanka, perhaps these countries are competing with us, and therefore on the export front, quite possible some of these industries like the apparel making industry might suffer a setback temporarily. But we have all the energy, we have all the wherewithal to re-emerge out of this crisis successfully. I'm very confident about this.
Thank you, sir. We'll have one more short question with which we'll go for the second session. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
This question from Sabarish. What are the suitable strategies to invite foreign capital in this pandemic COVID-19 situation?
What are they? Suitable?
What are the suitable strategies to invite foreign capital in this pandemic COVID-19 situation?
Good. Fine. The strategies are obvious. As I said, see, we have to turn ourselves to be investor friendly. And by our action, by our tenor, by our tone and tenor, we'll have to send a very clear message to the rest of the world that we are a investor-friendly country, and we have been doing it. We have started doing it pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. During pandemic, also we started. As I said, chief ministers of several states of this country, they started coming out with a lot of measures which are trying to entice the foreign capital or the foreign investors, and therefore the government of India on its part has done a lot of. Taken a lot of steps in order to make India as an investor-friendly country, and this is more than sufficient for us to be able to, on a sustained scale, attract the foreign direct investment which is required for us to build our economy or maybe rebuild our economy.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Guruswamy sir. Now, it's time for the second treat, without a break. Now I call upon Dr. Suganya to introduce about our second resource person, Professor Dr. Natarajan sir, the Commerce Department from Pondicherry University. Suganya ma'am, over to you.
Sir, are you audible to me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming and joining us here today on this occasion of webinar. I take this opportunity as my privilege to introduce Dr. P. Natarajan to the virtual gathering present here. Dr. P. Natarajan is well-experienced and multifaceted personality. He has immense teaching experience of 32 years and an extensive research experience. He guided over 60 MPhil scholars and 25 doctoral scholars so far. He contributed further to UGC major projects and ICSSR major research projects. He is also profoundly doctoral committee member for several state and central universities. His wide areas of interest to mention are research on financial management aspects, entrepreneurship development finance, project finance, solar power, infrastructure and film projects, venture capital, logistics and supply chain management. He has published amazingly 85 research papers in peer-reviewed journals and few in English dailies. Has knowledge of experience in various capacities, very few in mentioned here, working as UGC, SAP, DRS 2 coordinator, committee member, chairman for PhD guideship recognition in Pondicherry University, and also a chairman of Board of Examination. Performing as a examiner for UPSC, NAC peer team member, and member coordinator, online study material review committee member in UGC nominated by MHRD. Governing body member of 2 colleges affiliated to Pondicherry University. Few special committees where he has touched with his golden hands or Academic Performance Committee, Advisory Committee, Academic Staff College, Library Committee, Chief Superintendent for the conduct of Directorate of Distance Education Examinations and Flying Squad Chairman, Pondicherry University. He has also shouldered responsibilities related to examination, Board of Examination for PhD thesis evaluation of different universities at the national level, Board of Examination member in Azhagappa University, Annamalai University, Pondicherry University, Bardiyar University. His academic outreach can be listed or attended 29 international conferences, 74 national conferences, 6 workshops, organized 7 seminars, 96 talks given as special guest. Has obtained National Award title Lifetime Achievement Award from Untitled United Writers Association on 7/1/2006, given by Dr. N. Rajashekharan Pillai, UGC Acting Chairman, New Delhi, and Best NSS Officer Award for 2005 in Azhagappa University. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to present and share your valuable words. And now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Sir, please unmute, sir. Sir, you are being muted. Sir, please unmute yourself, sir. Sir, please unmute, sir.
Sir.
Yes,
yes.
sir.
Yeah,
yes,
sir. Me, huh?
Yes, sir. Very loud and clear,
Yes,
sir. Yes, sir.
So, good afternoon, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me an immense pleasure to take part in this webinar organized by the very great and popular university, Wells University, Chennai, the Vadapalani campus. The Jagadish and his team has nicely coordinated this program, and it is being carried out very successfully and effectively. So the beloved colleague and friend, Dr. S. Guruswamy, and the management committee members, secretary of this Wells University, and the head of the department, dean, and other faculty members who are involving in this virtual task. So really, I extend my hearty congratulations to every one of you for organizing this webinar on a very vital topic, challenges of the webinar on paradigm shift in the global trade in the post-COVID era. When Commerce Department is not discussing, Commerce and Management Department is not discussing, who else discuss on this issue? So that's why it is very much pertinent to discuss on the paradigm shift in global trade. So far, you have been listening more than 45 minutes or around 1 hour. Dr. Guruswamy has given a very lucid picture about that trend, the latest trend in the global trade, and he has highlighted, and to our surprise, both of us are optimistic thinkers. So that's why he has highlighted throughout his speech that we will have edge in the foreign trade, though we are facing this kind of distress at all. So my discussion will dwell upon. Thus, I want to highlight the implications of the COVID on international trade in the world economy as well as Indian economy, by highlighting again around 1.5 dozen or 2 dozen reasons and points, and then how to respond to this COVID from the international point of view, from the international trade point of view. And then third aspect, the third dimension of DOCism, I would like to give you a fresh thinking towards globalization. So these are all the 3 facets of my talk. First part is implications of COVID on the international trade, then the world economy, as well as the state Indian economy. Then the second part is how to respond, and third part is the globalization, the myth about the globalization. So thereby, it will be an eye-opener for the young research scholars how to ponder over towards globalization and what should be the real recommendation or suggestion to the economy. So this COVID-19 has created an unprecedented global health crisis. All of us know it has created a crisis, and that the crisis is the global health crisis. That's why it affects everyone. In 2007 and 8, we have come across 8 and 9, the global financial crisis we have come across. It is purely an economic crisis, which has not having much bearing on the people at large. So that's why, though it has a serious implications and the contagion effect, it will not, it didn't create so much of a Holocaust, especially social Holocaust. But whereas this COVID-19 has created heavy Holocaust, both economic Holocaust as well as social Holocaust throughout the world, because it necessitated the lockdown of the economy, which is really unprecedented. Even the people over a generation of 100 years, they may not be knowing this kind of lockdown continuously for a month, for a period of a month or over. So that's why this is an unprecedented global health crisis, and it damages the world economy and international trade very severely. It has affected almost 210 countries and territories across around the world, and infected more than 3 million people. 3 million people. So with this prelude, thus I would like to know, I would like to come how it affects the world economy and the Indian economy, and then we'll go to the responding, how to respond it with respect to from the international trade point of view. Okay, friends, you may be knowing from daily news and other the reading research article, we could have identify or enlisted a lot of implications of COVID on the international trade. The first and foremost thing I would like to highlight is 70 to 100 million people are pushed to do extreme poverty. Pushed to do extreme poverty. 70 to 100 million people are pushed to extreme poverty. It witnesses its deepest recession, and emerging developing economies are expected to contract by 2.5%. So the contraction economic growth has been contracted by 2.5% in the case of emerging developing economies, and advanced economies are shrunk by 7%. Similarly, the domestic supply and demand for finance and trade have been disrupted, and the cost to the global economy from the supportive packages through the central bank and the fiscal actions are very significant and likely to have a long-lasting and complex effects on the management of sovereign and the corporate debt. And then another effect is that it leads to the fundamental shift in the pattern of trade and the long-distance commerce. It has created a fundamental change in the pattern of trade and the long-distance commerce. And then there is again an evidence by an international body, UNESCO, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. In its report, it says that it's a severe blow. COVID pandemic is a severe blow to the liberal world order dominated by globalization. This is the word it is mentioned in the report. And similarly, bigger shock for the world economy than the global financial crisis. Even in the global, still we are a country like India are facing the contagion effect of global financial crisis. In the midst of it, this COVID has also come and it aggravated the recession very seriously. So bigger shock for the world economy than the GFC. GFC means global financial crisis, which has happened in America, but has shaken the whole world. So that's why it is called the contagion effect. Similarly, this corona has also a contagion effect, which has traveled all the way from the superhighway of globalization, globalization from China to the many hot spots of the world, like New York, Italy, England, and other countries. Okay, then let's come while coming to the globalization. I will tell you some more input on that. And then the bigger shock for the world economy than the GFC, and the export-led growth impacted severely. Where the developing countries like India are mainly focusing towards export-led growth, which may not be, or there is a doubt in that. So will it be feasible hereafter? And then disruption in GVC. That the GVC is another global value chain, is one of the buzzing word in the context of post-COVID era. And this GVC has been disrupted. So this is how it will affect the foreign trade of a particular country, especially developing. We have to be much worried about the developing nations and underdeveloped countries. We need not worry about advanced economies. But when now the situation is the advanced economies are severely hit, and that's why it will have its own contagion effect on the developing economy also. When US and European countries are affected seriously, definitely in the international trade parlance, India will also be affected. So that's why we have to be a little serious in deciding about the global value chain. We will have a lengthy discussion on that. Again, it's a separate topic of discussion for the conference, global value chain. And the perils and pitfalls of the over dependence on foreign supplies becomes clear. So this is CVG, when we closely look into the modus operandi of creating, implementing, and operating the global value supply chain, definitely we may be able to get certain very astonishing facts. Perils and pitfalls of the over dependence on the foreign supplies become an order. And then this COVID has created further effect on international trade in the form of global growth may plummet by -6% to 11%. Overall, the global growth could be reduced, or it is affected. They will have a negative rate of 6% to 11%. The global GDP will be shrink by 3%. And then the changes in the global demand pattern, as I said, then supply shock and lack of international mobility, then the impact on services. This COVID has given an impact on the trading of international foreign trade on goods as well as services also. And then above all, when the CVG and other things are getting affected, and when the digitization is to become the order of the day, so definitely this IPR issue will also come. IPR will become the more critical physical, will become more critical, because the physical movement of goods are replaced by movement of data, movement of design, movement of ideas. Data, design, and ideas, when they are moved through online or virtual, definitely the question of the question of maintaining the intellectual property rights will arise. How we are going to address that? So, and then more this issue, this pandemic, when it continues further, and we are unable to find out a solace for that, definitely the deglobalization and the increased emphasis on national self-reliance will also take place. And in addition to that, this pandemic ravages the economic foundations of the world trade, as I said. So that's why we may have a relook on the globalization. That's why a lot of debate and discussions are coming up about a globalization in the name of deglobalization, reglobalization, or globalization, or what is called self-reliance and all. And the world of new order, all these things are pertaining to this. So that is the ravages the economic foundation of the world trade. And it is an outcome of the hyper-globalization or starting of deglobalization, then facing the recession and the global losses, which may exceed the World War I and II. The recession, the recession effect will be more than that of the World War I and II. So that's why I said the Holocaust effect is high. The economic Holocaust and social Holocaust effect is very high due to this pandemic, because it's still it continues. We are not at coming to the end of this disaster, and the falling world price and crude oil has also added further anxieties. And then there is nowadays now in the recent past, a lot of estimates are available on the economic loss and post-COVID growth path. So this is again a glimpses about the implications of the COVID on world economy from the international trade point of view. And coming to the Indian point of view, what is the effect of India? Definitely being the part of the integrated economy, India is getting affected in the foreign trade very much. And the World Bank report June 2020, World Bank report June 2020, that is the Global Economic Prospects, GEP, what is called GEP, Global Economic Prospects. There it says that the Indian economy is expected to contract by 3.2% in 2019 and 20. And in 2020 and 21, it will be contracted by 3.1%. So it is, then the push to the business business sentiment to the lowest level. So it has created a kind of panic situation, and thereby business sentiments are getting into the lowest levels. And then impacted the supply chain. As I said, when the global supply chain is getting disrupted, automatically domestic supply chain will also be getting affected. And then economic growth, as I said, then 70 to 80% of cancellation of orders, especially export orders. This is what being highlighted by the president of FIEO, Federation of Indian Export Organization. There is 70 to 80% of cancellation of export orders are there, and a lot of job losses are coming. And raising NPAs among the exporting units, non-performing assets from the exporting units are getting is rising. So these are all some of the panic situation prevailing in Indian economy. And in terms of data, if you need the export growth, export has plunged by $10.3 billion US dollar, $10.36 billion it has reduced. The year-on-year growth, the negative growth of 60.28%, negative growth of 60.28%. Similarly, the import has also reduced to the tune of $17.12 billion, $17.12 billion, and the growth rate, the decline in the growth rate is 58.65%, 58.65%. And then that similarly trade deficit. Whereas in 2019, the import was 41.4 billion. Now the import has 17.12 only. Similarly, in the case of trade deficit, it has come to 6.76 when comparing to the last year, that is 2019 April. It was 15.33 billion US dollar. Trade deficit has reduced. So it is the lowest in the last 4 years, trade deficit. And the export, the bloodbath is taking place because of this pandemic. And the exports are shrink by, it shrink in 28 out of 30 sectors. Out of 30 sectors, nearly 28 sectors are getting affected due to this pandemic. And 70% of the order cancellation due to the COVID, as I said earlier, and the large-scale disruption in the supply chain. So this is from the Indian economy point of view. Okay, now let us come to the aspect of responding. How to respond to this COVID, what to do. So for which I would like to list out some guidelines or things. And again, the World Bank also released a guidance note of do's and don'ts of trade policy in response to COVID. How the countries, how to design and implement the trade policy for which they have prescribed certain do's and don'ts. This is my own prescription based upon certain references, literature references. So the post-pandemic environment, they in many countries are likely to take up the following initiatives. Number one, intensively dedicate. They intensively dedicate their efforts towards rebooting their industries, and protecting their vital and essential supply. This is one of the important lesson in the pandemic, in the present stage. So intensively dedicate their efforts towards rebooting their industry and protecting their vital and essential supplies. So thereby, as a country, we have our own, we can build up or strengthen our strength, the inherent strength or fundamentals, and with which we may be able to thrive in the business situation. And then ensuring the availability of essentials for the future. That is also very much essential. The first and foremost step to be taken up by the Indian companies and Indian industries are we have to ensure the supply of essentials like food products, then pharma and other medical equipments. Everything we have to keep it ready and ensure its availability. Thereby, even in the days to come, definitely the COVID will be getting its pickedness. So when you see the graph of the epidemic, graph of this the epidemic, certainly now only it is in the leaping stage. So there again, in the month of August or September, it will get into the peak point, and then it will start reducing. That is what many predictions says. So for which we have to ensure the availability of essential items. And then the conservative trade policy, that is very much essential. Conservative trade policy is very much essential for every country, especially a country like India. And for which increase in the import tariff and overt or overt non-tariff barriers could be avoided. And the licensing procedure could be freed to some extent, and the import and the export quotas can be relaxed, and the maintenance of their strategic resources are highly essential. So then to defend the existing domestic industry, increase recourse to trade remedial measures such as anti-dumping duties and anti-subsidy duties and safeguard duties can also be imposed. And then reconsider the operational footprints of to reflect the new risks. So this kind of academic uncertainties, it's exactly, this pandemic is an exact model for the uncertainty. So in our academic curriculum, we could have heard about the three situations, decision situations: certainty, risky, and uncertainty. And this pandemic has created an uncertain situation, and which is really unpredictable, and we are unable to project it properly also. And that's why we have to make a kind of scenario analysis. By doing scenario analysis, we may be able to project to some extent. Even then, the results we may not be in a position to concrete results. So reconsider the operational footprints to reflect the new risks, and consider how to capture the value for our services from services, because as a service in the international trade on goods and trade on services. So the trade on services is gaining momentum in the global trade. And that's why we have to find out the opportunity to capture value from services. Though we are in the service sector, but still we have to work very hard and find out the ways and means to create a service exports like the consultancy exports, the software exports, and other medical care exports, hospitality exports, and other things. Even tourism exports also coming under the service exports. So that the service exports will dominate in the foreign trade in the post COVID era. So it is better to concentrate on the service sector activities and see how the value enhancement can be done in that. Because once when this value enhancement is taking place consistently, then only we may be able to win over the confidence of the global players and get the orders and attract the global players to come to India. Especially education is one of the, again, service industry which has a rich potential. And presently our government has also identified that we have to attract global students. We have to attract students from global. So far we are exporting our students to Australia, England, and other countries, even China. We are exporting, but that trend should reverse. And India should be the hub for higher education, and for which we have to design the modus operandi. Thereby, we could do value enhanced service, education service, with which we may be able to, the education sector will flourish. It can contribute a good amount of forex revenue to the exchequer. So that's why service sector and value addition in the service sector is very much essential. Mere keeping services in the export, because we have to get export orders. So for which they are seeing the value additions. So that's why we have to work for creating value addition in service by providing services, which in turn create an export opportunity very well. And then we have to be very flexible and resilient. Resilient means we have to be very dynamic. So this COVID says, or it is another great lesson from this pandemic is, we have to be very dynamic. What has happened in Japan, having Second World War, they have totally demolished with all regeneration. They have taken up, and they are glittering the global arena. Such kind of efforts we have to put in, and it should be mainly done by the people of the country. So that's why I said be flexible and resilient. Economy should be, when all the time we cannot blame the economy or government. First it starts from individuals, it starts from institution, it starts from department, and then it starts from government. So when all the stakeholders are acting with in a resilient mood, definitely we can face the challenges and we can revive and we can find a new order, definitely. And then prioritize speed to market and proximity to customers. That is also very much essential. So instead of finding out orders from big countries, that is the supply chain problem has been crept in the recent past. So for which what we have to do is we have to ensure the prioritize the speed to market and the proximity to customers, and thereby we may be able to deliver the goods on time. So even in the incident, by means of sending that chloroquine tablet, India is able to get a very good image in the front of global arena. So that is nothing but the proximity to customers and the speed to market. That is very much essential. So when other countries are not in a position to come forward to supply that medicine, we were able to do it. So that gives a big credit to the country. So like that, in many other front also, we have to take efforts. And then build a closer supply relationship. Closer supply relationship is also very much essential to sustain in the situation. Okay, so with this, I have given two aspects. One is the implication, and then how to respond it. And many more things are given by Dr. Guruswamy in the form of strategies. And now let us come to the very pertinent aspect of this. Friends, all of you may be knowing very well, India has gone for globalization some 30 years back. Now almost 3 decades are going to over. First decade, second decade, third decade, 1991 to 20, then 20 to 21, the 20 to 30, then 1990 to 2000, 2000 to 2010, 2010 to 2020. So 3 decades of globalization period is over. It's the right time to make a thorough introspection. Even at the time of taking up globalization, it has been pushed to India. So we have not taken up globalization on our own. Also under stressed circumstances only, we have taken up this globalization. Otherwise, we would not opt it out of compulsion. Now, having taken up, but there is no other go. When every country is integrated, we should also go with that. And it's a time, at least this COVID incident, the pandemic, makes us to have a thorough introspection in all aspects about the globalization. We have to look into the nitty-gritty of globalization, because the globalization has the 3 sides. It has its own good side, bad side, and ugly side. The globalization has its own sides. Normally 2 phases we used to say, but it is a three-dimensional phenomenon. Globalization is a three-dimensional phenomenon. So it has a good side, bad side, as well as ugly side. So when we are looking into it, taking into account the prevailing circumstances, definitely we may be able to rebuild, or we may be able to reinvent, or we may be able to redesign, or we may be able to calibrate the globalization process so as to suit our economy. So that is the need of the hour. So that's why I am very particular in throwing some light on the concept of globalization. So this globalization is bringing to the collapse and fundamental change in the international supply chain and management, like that many experts are telling. And at this juncture, as a common man or as an academician, we have to look into that and see will it be true or not? Shall we go for alternative, like that? So this the saying about the globalization tells about as I said earlier, the globalization is really a kind of a highway only through which this COVID has also come from China to many other hotspot of the global nerve center, like the New York, London, Paris, and other countries. And similarly, when we look into the India, this COVID-19 has come in the highway in the form of globalization, and it mainly hit the hotspot of the country, like New Delhi, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Indore, Gujarat, Calcutta, and Chennai. So when we look into that, we can find a kind of similarity. We can find out a kind of hypothesis that yes, the globalization may be the root cause for that. Because earlier, just a few years, 2018, throughout 2018, we might have come across trade war between US and US and India, US and China, and that trade war has also created a lot of implications or contagion effect on the Indian economy and the foreign trade, international trade of India. So at this juncture, we have to make a thorough introspection about the globalization. Even in last 2 years back, 3 years back, when you were asking the question, globalization need or there is no need to ask the question whether globalization is need or not. But now, at least at this juncture, we have to make a thorough introspection and see that how the globalization is needed or not, and how the globalization process can be modified, and what about the India's role in that. So thereby, we may be able to strengthen ourselves so as to face these kind of uncertainties. Otherwise, these uncertainties will affect or collapse the economy in total. So that's why the realization is very much essential. That's in the lighter vein. My own view is also different. My own view is there. Keeping it abeyance, I would like to tell about what is the discussion going on or about the globalization. So there are two important realizations. There are two important realizations derived in the globalization process in the what is called in the pandemic era or post-COVID era. So this the globalization not only unlocks the means. Globalization not only unlocks the means for the market, it also adds wings to epidemics that spread into no time across the global political and social border and the boundaries. So this is one of the reference from an article. And the global firms, in their bid to remain competitive, have crafted their circuits of GVC centering around some countries, China, and the firms and government all over the world realized the dereliction of the such architecture of that globalization architecture. So because many times the ultimate spirit behind the globalization process is survival of the fittest. You might have heard about the jungle rule of law. That jungle rule of law will hold good in the globalization process. So far, we have the economy is almost in the boom situation. The globalization process works well, and because they have framed even WTO rules and all have been framed on the basis when the country is in a booming condition, when the world is in a booming condition, what are all the rules and regulations like that? They didn't predict about uncertainty like this. The worst uncertainty like this COVID, no, they didn't predict, and that's why the rules and regulations are not applicable in the present circumstances. That's why a lot of commotion arises. And again, countries also started realizing about what is the positive side, positive and negative aspect of the globalization. So earlier, out of curiosity, out of compulsion, when we are taking up globalization, we have given much importance to positive aspect of globalization. But now it's a time, it's a natural time, the time given by the natural disaster, to look into, to introspect the globalization process in a more effective way. And that's why the firms are saying that the competition, when you say competition, if it is healthy competition, it's well and good, but healthy competition is not taking place. So clear category in the three decades, we could understand that the purpose of free market economy is still a big question, whether a free market economy exists or not. So when it is when there is a lot of challenges in that, so why we have to while away with that? Why we have to while away with that? And I think there is another principle: no one size is fit for all. No one size is fit for all. When that concept, when we are taking up that concept, definitely each and every country has to have their own tailor-made policies. Of course, we cannot totally neglect the globalization process, but we can have a kind of modified globalized system or integration, what is called the gated globalization. It is called technically called the gated globalization with multiple value chains and alternative supply chain. This is also being highlighted by Dr. Gurusamy. So multiple value chains. So rather relying upon only the global value chain and global value chain, which is designed mainly by the so-called the dominating country in the globalization process. And there are no alternatives, no other alternatives for the country like India to choose. So that's why multiple value chains and alternative supply chain can also be developed, and thereby this gated globalization will become will be very helpful. This is again one school of thought, and then we have to make a kind of thorough. And many times this globalization is being questioned by citing this kind of global global value chain only. Many times it is being challenged by citing the global value chain. So for which we have to look into how the global value chain is getting disrupted and what they are commenting upon it. So that can be highlighted here. How it leads to the globalization process that we will discuss now. So this globalization envisages the borderless world or seeks to world as a global village. It may be attributed by accelerated flow of goods, people, capital, information, and energy across borders, often enabled the technological development. And this globalization becomes globalization in the present day context, having seen various aspects of it. And that's why the negative side of the globalization is being viewed seriously. Negative side of the globalization is being viewed very seriously. And the comments given by the different observations and the anti-globalization or protectionism sentiments says that a kind of anti-globalization wave is taking place. But what's the reality of it? That also we have to look into. So for which they are citing a reason that slowing the globalization of trade. Globalization of trade is getting slowed down, not because of this, the COVID period of last 2-3 months. So it is getting slowed down even since 2008. That means the global financial crisis period. The GDP grows from 39% in 1991 to 61% 2008, and but afterwards it has stagnated over the past decade. In the last decade, it has been stagnated. Global GDP has been stagnated. Similarly, the personal remittance flows previously on the rise flattened to around 0.75% of global GDP. And then other causes for the great stagnation, the globalization of goods and capital also taking place. And then another second reason is the slowing globalization of information. Slowing globalization of information is also taking place, and then slowing globalization of people. So many times you might have heard in the last 1 or 2 years through the newspaper and all, visa restrictions policy of USA and the raising cases of racial attacks in countries like Australia. It all affects to slow down the movement of people, globalization of people, and thereby movement of people is getting arrested, and movement of information, movement of the globalization of trade, and then slowing the globalization of energy, that is also taking place. The net international energy trade in 1990 was 1.5 billion tons on oil equivalent. In 2008, it was 2.5 billion. 2008. In 2018, so that is in the last decade, it is 2.8 billion only. So that means slowing globalization of energy, slowing the globalization of people, slowing the globalization of information, slowing the globalization of trade. It all witnesses that the globalization process has its own intrinsic weaknesses. So that we have to look into, and we have to find out the ways and means to pluck out those weaknesses and strengthen it if possible, or else we have to pave the way. We have to go for the alternatives, either deglobalization or reglobalization. And for which it is very much essential to think about or to ponder over the global supply chain. That is a CBG, global supply chain, which is again another important concept. Whether we can opt the global supply chain or a local supply chain, local value chain or a regional value chain. And, so that here it is better to undergo a kind of scenario analysis. That scenario analysis also, they are making a kind of three situations on the basis of certain assumptions and see that which situation will work out. And ultimately they are coming to the conclusion that still we have to wait a few more months and then decide about the alternative. And the three scenario based on the application of the value chain only, mainly the global value chain. Instead of global value chain, can we go for local value chain? That is the localization instead of globalization. Localization instead of globalization. Will it pave the way? Will it be a solace for that? And then regional value chain. Regional value chain. That is the regionalization instead of globalization. Restriction on the shorten the supply, because supply. So when we go for regional value chain, certainly we may be able to restructure and shorten the supply chain, and it will give some scope for mitigating the problem of the GVC, that is a global value chain. And then the third part is the third scenario is the global value chain itself. A kind of a continuation of the globalization. Continuation of the globalization is the third scenario, but for which the globalization will recover when the economic recession has ended and financial markets have recovered. So then only this assurance of the third scenario may take place. The continuation of globalization will it needs the recovery of the recovery of the economy, recovery from economic recession, and ended the financial market. So that way, when the end of the pandemic only ensure the complete recovery from coming out from the economic recession, as well as coming out from the strengthen the financial market. So that gives scope for continuing with the globalization. So world economy often reacted according to normally, having seen the earlier disasters, that is a global financial meltdown and Great Depression. No, world economy often reached according to a V-shaped model to an epidemic. V-shaped model to an epidemic, which says that V-shaped model to the epidemic says that quick down and quick backup. Quick down and quick backup has to take place, and thereby we may be able to withstand. We shaped a model to the epidemic, that is a quick down and quick backup. So the participation in the international, inter-regional GVC, global supply chain, and intra-global value chain will really be a solace to strengthen or to fine-tune the global value chain process, and thereby participation to other countries could be given duly in the value chain process, and it must be a kind of transparency should be ensured how the value additions are taking place based on the competitive edges it is taking place. Again, when you say competitive edges, it is not, there are the metrics what are being used for that has to be fine-tuned or recalibrated, and thereby those metrics are will be flawless. When it is flawless, definitely what is the country, how the particular country is getting edge over other, so that can be measured exactly, and a kind of transparency could be ensured, and with which the confidence among the economies could be built in. And that's why the global value chain process should be relooked, and it has to be duly modified and altered so as to suit to the condition, which in turn ensure confidence among the global buyers, and thereby international trade will not be affected. And while going for this value chain, global value chain, again, there are several components. That value chain, they have taken up 3 parameters based upon the product, and 4 parameters based on the product, and 2 parameters based on the services. So based on that, GVC is being computed. And again, around 12 countries are involving in that in deciding about the global value chain process, and it is being taken up with they are calling it as a GVC archetypes. Archetype means the pattern, example, or model. Archetypes. 5 there's GVC archetype are being designed that the goods producing industries, they have taken up goods producing industries based upon four important aspects, and global innovation, labor intensive goods, regional processing, and resource intensive goods. These are all the four important parameters or metrics taken up to identify the good producing industries in the computation process of global value chain. And before that, the industries are being identified based on three important factors. What is called industry factor inputs, then trade intensity and country participation. Trade intensity, country participation, and industry factor inputs. Based on that, the industries are being identified in the process of deciding about designing the global value chain. And this global value chain has been designed for product as well as services separately. With respect to product, there are four parameters identified. One is the global innovation, labor intensive goods, regional processing, and resource intensive goods. Thus, there are a lot of sub-indications, sub-criteria also there, but I'm not mentioning that. Only these four parameters with respect to the goods producing industry called global innovation, labor intensive good, and regional processing and resource intensive goods. Because we cannot, as I said earlier, no one says it's fit for all. So that's why the supply chain design developed may not hold good for all the industry, all type of industry and for all type of products. So that's why it has to be done. And it is being done in the form of a research study by McKinsey Global Institute, MGI. McKinsey Global Institute has undertaken a study by means of taking up 23 global value chain spanning over 43 countries. They have conducted a big study among the related 43 countries and the 23 global value chain process, and they have identified three important parameters to select the industries in the company: industry factor inputs, and the trade intensity, and the country participation. And they have evolved four criteria for production units, and similarly for service units, they have identified two criteria. One is labor intensive services and knowledge intensive services. Labor intensive services and knowledge intensive services. And invariably, the knowledge intensive services are playing a vital role in the present day context. And that's why advanced countries are dominating the global value chain process. And that's how China is also being a party in the global value chain process. And fortunately, they have developed consistently the manufacturing base. That is the real sector of the China. Real sector of the China, that is the manufacturing sector, is really very strong. And that's why they are getting competitive edge over others. They are getting competitive edge over others, and with which they may be able to survive and thrive in any kind of situation. Even in pandemic, so it's only a short-term effect. Definitely, they may be glooming after a few months. So that's why, and that is nothing but they have edge over other countries. Though they are thickly populated, and I used to tell jovially, India is the elder brother. China is the elder brother for India. China is the elder brother for India. So though they are elder brother in India in terms of population, without citing the population size as a problem, they are converting it as an opportunity by means of strengthening the manufacturing sector. And that's how they are able to take part in the global value chain process, and they are able to penetrate into global market very widely. And even in India, we are depending on many products, even consumer goods and industrial goods. We are depending on China very much. And once when that this is nothing but creating over dependence, they have created it, automatically took place. But once the over dependence comes, that economy should not act with that dominance or with arrogance. That is the case. What I would like to tell you in this through this forum. So then only kind of international cooperation will there. So as I said, all of us, all the country economy cannot grow in the same way, in the same length, at the same speed. So now, in spite of some constraints, China is able to grow. It is because of their real calibers, capacity, and other things. It is not due to mere affluence. But whereas when you compare to other countries, US and Europe, affluence is there, and that affluence has come through knowledge. And the situation like this COVID, what it advocates is, though the countries are engaging the knowledge intensive services very well, and be an advanced economy, they have to act with the wisdom. When they are acting with the wisdom, definitely they may be able to ensure the international cooperation very well, and with which this pandemic can be washed out, can be faced very effectively, and that way everyone can thrive happily. That is what we have to think with respect to globalization. There is a time for that's why again many economies, a country like India, even we are marching towards a kind of self-reliance. We are talking about self-reliance in the recent past, but which is very much essential for a country like India. So I'm not against the globalization process, but at the same time, I'm very much interested in relying upon the self-reliance. Thereby, the competence and caliber of the people, the so-called Indians, could be effectuated, and with which the self-reliance will become a reality. And fortunately, we have a rich resources, natural resources, and other thing. The thing is, we are unable to tap it. There was a gap even in 1960s. Since 1960 we are telling that like that only. So in the knowledge era, so when we are concentrating on the knowledge products and the service exports and maintaining utilization of natural resources very effectively, definitely we may be able to become the superpower. As Abdul Kalam has rightly visualized, India will become superpower. So he has said that in India it should become superpower in 2020. But at least at this time in 2020, due to COVID pandemic, we have to make a thorough introspection and see that our potential should be tapped out without giving room for prejudices, bias, arrogance, and other thing. In the name of strategy, my strategy in the right spirit, the word in the last 3 months, since I find some free time, I may be able to look into the many terminologies what we are using in the free market economy. So when I come to that, those terminologies are being questioned now, whether those terminologies are applicable or not, whether it requires fine-tuning or not. So that's how I observed. So I don't want to disclose it in this forum. So I have listed out around 40 terminologies. Will it hold good in the present day context or not, or how it should be modified? So when we look into that, definitely to some extent we can think about self-reliance, and thereby we may be able to survive and thrive very successfully. And this pandemic can be phased out very easily. So with this piece of information, as I said, India has the strong hope to effectuate its international trade, and it will take part in the globalization process. And thereby, now itself, India is acting as a mediator for many issues. So once we are strengthening our fundamentals, definitely we will find a place in that. So with this piece of information, I would like to congratulate the teams who have organized the conference on international effect of the COVID on international trade. So I hope I have given a spark towards the globalization. There are a lot of discussions going on in that, and that's why it's a time to really look into the globalization of international trade practices also. As our fellow speaker said, globalization cannot be averted still. So that's why it requires a refinement. It requires a recalibration. And as a country, we have to strengthen ourselves, and thereby we will also be able to take part in the global value chain process. And that's why all ill effects of global value chain or disruptions of global value chain could be nullified. So India has such a rich potential.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I call upon Dr. Vanilla Fatima for the question answer session. Ma'am, over to you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, there are a few questions from participants. One is from Vishal Krishnan. Explain the trade protection measures adopted by the government in order to protect the trade in the economy.
Trade in India. So trade protection measures are popularly classified into two categories. One is the barriers, tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. Trade barriers and the tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers in the form of fixing quotas and compulsory restricting licenses. So thereby we may be able to ensure protection to the domestic firms. And this is how we did earlier. But with the advent of a globalization process, we have liberalized. And quota has been removed. And thereby, even with respect to India, the textile industry, India is very seriously affected because in the globalization process. Because when the quota is removed, the textile industry lost the opportunity of getting export orders, and that's why we are losing important significance. So trade barriers could be removed, and thereby protection could be ensured. Next.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Next question from Rekha Ramesh. Will the level of unemployment rise in the post-COVID in?
Whether
Domestic international level. In domestic international level.
level of unemployment.
Yes, sir. The level of unemployment rise in the post-COVID in the domestic international level.
Yeah, right now I am not in a position to give exact data, but the level of unemployment prevails domestically as well as globally. Because of lockdown. Because most of the works are undertaken by this kind of migrant workers. And now due to this lockdown situation, the government is permitting them to go to their hometown, and thereby industries are suffering due to want of manpower. When you say industry, MSMEs mainly, and then banking sector and other institutions, they are suffering due to want of manpower, and especially the people in the unorganized sector, they are not in a position to get employment opportunity, and that's why this situation prevails in almost all the economies in the world.
Okay, sir. Next, third question, Dr. Munishwaran. What are the impact of Indian fast-moving consumer goods companies in post-COVID-19?
Fast-moving consumer goods company. No, it is industry.
Yes.
Fast-moving consumer goods. Okay, so they were very much plunging into the promotional measures. The fast-moving consumer goods, their product chain, the product chain has also been enlarged, and they are able to ensure the reach of consumers, and that's why the fast-moving consumer goods industry has gone into the grassroots villages of the country, especially in India. Even through various the online application, we may be able to get consumer goods, and especially in the case of hotel and the restaurants, we may be able to order food over phone and mobile, and thereby we may be able to get it. And thereby this fast-moving consumer goods industry has concentrated very well on the two important aspects, what is called the place utility and time utility. In economics, you might have studied when we have to create a demand for the commodity, demand for the good, we have to look into three aspects of demand. One is form utility, time utility, and place utility. Form utility, time utility, and place utility. These three things decides the demand for a product. With respect to fast-moving consumer goods, all the three are able to fulfill by the supplier, and that's why fast-moving goods are able to the industries are able to survive. And in a way, by means of undergoing a lot of promotional measures, they are inducing the people or instigating the people to consume more. And that's how even government is also wanting it. Consumption level should be increased. But as a citizen of the country, I'm telling that increasing the consumption level beyond the required level is not advisable. Now, right now, we are facing a kind of hyper-consumerism, which is not at all good for the growth of the country. Hyper-consumerism. So that's why, in a way, the self-reliance concepts will hold good. Just for the purpose of marketing, the industries with all competitive spirit, they are dumping the products and making all kind of concessions, gift subsidies, and make the people to be a consumer for that. And many times they become addict to that also. So thereby our consumption pattern is getting changed, and it leads to hyper-consumerism. This is the threat side of the fast-moving goods. We have to look into that.
Okay, sir. Next question from Ramesh Unikrishnan. The main focus of this central government is to improve domestic market. Whether this will affect the imports, affect the imports aspects globally.
Okay, strengthening the global firms, the domestic firms. No, strengthening the domestic firm will not affect export. Okay, when our domestic firms are really competitive, in the form of getting competitive cost advantage, in the form of ensuring quality, in the form of making value addition, definitely our domestic firms will have good amount of export orders. Right now, in the pharma industry, you could have a classic example, you could have seen the real life example. The chloroquine tablet has been demanded by more than 100 countries. So that itself shows that Indian domestic firms, Dr. Reddy, Cipla, these firms are having very good demand for the medicines and other things. Similarly, we have to strengthen other aspects. During the 80s, early 80s and all, 1980s, Indian construction industry was very popular. Indian construction firms were very popular, and they have established, they have obtained a lot of export orders, many countries, including UAE, United Arab Emirates, and other countries. And that's how we made a mark. Indians made a mark. But unfortunately, civil construction, the construction industry has get a setback. Similarly, textile sector, textile units are getting setback. And that's why it is very much essential to strengthen the domestic firms, which in a way, it will enhance the export opportunity in the form of value addition, competitive pricing, and other things. So that way, the global international trade or international business will not be affected by strengthening the domestic firms. Domestic firm means not a domestic trade. Okay? When we are encouraging or strengthening the domestic firms, it will pave the way for both domestic trade and international trade. Because many a time, when we say made in India, now such products are not acceptable. Even right now, our speaker has said on his own way, our Gurmukh sir, but he said, I prefer to have a product made by Germany and Japan, like that. No, so to that extent, they made a mark in quality and price, and that's why, as a consumers, we are naturally preferring the best product, and that best robustness should be introduced or inculcated in our product. That's why domestic firms should be strengthened.
Okay. Another question from Ilavarsan sir. Can you please explain about the inflation and the pre and post COVID in COVID-19 period?
So may I request Dr. Gurusamy sir to react on that?
Yes, sure, definitely.
Please.
My pleasure. The question is how or what will happen to inflation? That's what the question is?
Yes, sir.
Pre and post COVID, sir.
So inflation is something which is good. When you have inflation, that means you have people with a lot of purchasing power. That's what it indicates. So too much of money chasing too few goods. That's what
Yes.
people say as inflation.
Yes.
And what the government is trying to do, so with the pandemic causing ravage across the society in terms of loss of jobs, loss of income, loss of demand. So to pep up the demand, government itself says put more money in the hands of people. That means government itself believes in the ideology, philosophy of having what is called an idealistic inflation. So, inflation, although it's considered to be bad because it causes rise in prices, sometimes skyrocketing of prices, acceptable level of inflation is always good. And therefore, inflation is not anything bad idea. So when you have more purchasing power, that's going to have more impact on the demand for goods, and therefore it will have an impact on the investment. People, the industries will be very happy to produce more, sell more. I think that is what all about economic activity, and that's what we are talking about. What to do, how to, what kind of steps we need to take in order to, in post-pandemic, in order to revive and revitalize the industry, economy, and so on. If it's good, I think going by what is like done by the government, post-pandemic, there is a possibility that the inflation might rise, and which should be acceptable and which should be good also. There is nothing wrong. And of course, whenever it reaches an astronomical level or uncontrolled level, our Central Monetary Authority, the Reserve Bank of India, will step in and will take a lot of, the required initiative through maybe open market operations or maybe the bank rate policy and so on. And then in order to rein in on the inflation and then to keep inflation under check and control.
Then,
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to add one more point.
Yes,
So
sir.
at this juncture, that is the post-COVID, the survival, we have to work for survival first. That is the thing. So we don't bother about inflation, forex revenue, and other factors. And that's why government is almost all economies, they have taken up all bailout measures, are pumping huge amount of money. As he rightly pointed out, the government of India is pumping more than 20 lakh crores. So thereby, they want to ensure more liquidity. They want to ensure people to consume, and naturally, a kind of the increase in the inflation will take place temporarily. Then it could be adjusted by the monetary authorities properly. Thank you.
Last question, sir. Thank you, sir. How self-reliant economy strategy will impact our international trade relations post-COVID-19?
Question to me or Professor Natarajan?
Anyone can answer, sir.
Anyone can answer.
I'm too happy to answer. Shall I answer, sir?
Yeah, you tell. I will answer.
Professor Natarajan has to be complimented when he said that instead of globalization, think local. Localization should be the mantra. See, we had the advantage. In fact, we are one of the few countries in the world to have had the advantage of globalization. We had allowed people to go work in any part of the globe, and we have benefited from the logistics, supply chain management, supply chain value addition, for example. And the time has come, probably post-COVID, we'll have to rethink ourselves. And then, as Donald Trump says, we should localize ourselves. And then see, when compared to any other country in the world, even China and the US, so we are blessed with, we are endowed with so many natural resources. There is nothing which is unavailable in India. Every resource of any resource which is required for any type of industry, whether it is iron making, steel making industry, or apparel industry, or maybe a pharmaceutical industry, or a cement industry, whatever the type of industry that you're talking about, we have all the resources. And we also do have the required manpower. And therefore, conversion of raw material to finished product in locally, to be able to sell across the globe, to make the country great, strong, I think should be possible. I think that should sound as the viable option also.
Okay, just to add Dr. Guruswamy sir's explanation, India has a rich potential, I said already, but we are unable to tap it due to one or other reasons. It may be so many factors. Even in the globalization, it's not we are talking about only economic globalization, but that there are different dimensions and theories of globalization, like liberalism, political realism, Marxism, constructivism, like that. So from that perspective, when we look, definitely that self-reliance will not affect our international relations. No? So that's why we can strengthen the capability, because fortunately we have a good amount of population. And that is the knowledge era. We are having a lot of knowledge workers. We are working as a paid servant to other countries. So when you say IT sector of USA, most of them are dominated by Indians. So we are working as an employee there. Instead, when we allow them to start a business, company industry here, certainly we may be able to flourish. And that's why Make in India concept has been introduced, and we can make it as a made in India, and thereby, and then venture capital activities are also be enhanced venture capital. But now, right now, from the observation of the many aspirants, I could say that the things with what are the schemes should be implemented in practice, should be practiced in the real spirit, and thereby we may be able to call out very efficient entrepreneurs from among the youth entrepreneurs, so technocrats. And once when you are identifying them and giving them proper path, certainly they will do wonders. And that's why that's a concept, ease of doing business. In the ease of doing business also, India has calibrated it, and that way ease of doing business in India is really be eased out. And this venture capital situation, venture capital and angel financing and cloud financing, when we are providing it the real sense without much hurdle, definitely the young entrepreneurs will be taking up ventures in India, and thereby India will become a self-reliant country. There is no doubt in that. But there are certain hitches. It may be due to religious factors, political factors, and so on. So we have to remove all the from overcoming all those things. When we are going in a very transparent manner, definitely we may be able to tap the potentials of knowledge capabilities. Okay, so that's why self-reliance in no way affect the international relations. Definitely.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So it just reminds me when both the professors make these things. In a Tamil we have a saying, enna velam illai in the Tirunaatil. So it just reminds me of that.
Yes.
And thank you so much for both the professors, Dr. Guruswamy sir and Dr. Natarajan sir. Now I call upon Dr. Jayamala for giving the formal vote of thanks. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, shall I, sir?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks for this webinar on paradigm shift in global trade in post-COVID-19. I, on behalf of the Department of Commerce, extend a hearty vote of thanks to the honorable resource persons who blessed us with their presence. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. S. Guruswamy, Professor and Head, Department of Commerce, University of Madras, for giving an excellent coverage and in-depth information in the first session of today's webinar on the challenges, opportunities, and strategies for India during this pandemic period. We are all inspired by your extempore presentation, sir. Truly said, you are spellbound and your points are well taken by us. Thank you once again, sir. Similarly, I also would like to extend a special thanks to Dr. P. Nadarajan, Professor, Department of Commerce, Pondicherry University, for inspiring us with his presentation in the second session on globalization in a post-COVID-19 world era. The way our resource person explained the topic in 3 different phases is extraordinary. Thank you very much for your presentation, sir. Well, an event like this cannot be successful without an active involvement of our participants. My special thanks goes to all the participants who attended this webinar. I am also very grateful to the management, dean and directors for giving us an excellent opportunity and freedom to conduct this webinar. Further, I also wish to express my gratitude to all our HODs, Dr. P. Jagdishan sir, Dr. N. Chandran, and Dr. S. Subramaniam sir, and Vanilla Sri ma'am for providing continuous support and encouragement. As no program can become successful with a single person, so I extend my big thanks to all the staff members of the Department of Commerce General for their support and willingness to take on the completion of responsibilities beyond their comfort zones. Thank you one and all for making this event a grand success. Thank you. Stay home and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. So I think the feedback link would have been, it is provided in the chat box, so people can do it. And for any certificate related queries, you can contact Dr. Jaikani and Dr. Vanilla Fatima Arani. HOD sir, do you have something to say?
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for accepting my invitation, sir. Thank you, Professor Guruswamy, sir. Professor Natarajan, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Guruswamy, sir, very much impressed to be with you. We'll have many more interaction.
We'll have one more occasion to meet again.
So, you are acting as a Salaman Papaya. I'm acting as
Thank you. Thank you.
You will do that.
Probably we'll take to grab that opportunity of providing one more platform for both of you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you.
We can drop. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.